Yeah, thanks, Junaid. But before I begin, like Junaid mentioned, today we are doing this along with Unicorp Technologies. So I wanted to introduce Hashmat. He manages the sales for networking and associated focus products. Hashmat, over to you for an introduction.
Thanks, Sriram. Um, Hi all, this is Mohammad Hashmat from Unicorp Technologies. I'm the sales manager here, and like Sriram said, we take care of the VMware part on the sales front. I also have my other colleagues, Ankur, Fahad, Anmol, Rahul, and Ganga joining from Dubai. Uh, just to brief you about Unicorp, Unicorp is a system integrator company. We are in Abu Dhabi, located in Abu Dhabi from past 12 years. And also we do have a branch office in Dubai, which is running for past 5 years. Um, as a partner with the VMware, whom we are having a long time relationship with VMware, we wanted to give an SD-WAN solution presentation to our customers, and that's all this webinar is all about. We also having Redington team with us. We, along with VMware, we are giving this presentation to you. As most of our customers know about us, Unicorp, we are the system integrator company. We deal with many other IT infrastructure and security solutions. I would not want to take much of time as to what we do, and rather let us focus on today's webinar. I thank all the attendees who have attended the session, and we will go through this session. The session will be about 30 to 45 minutes, and then later we'll have a Q&A session. In between, if anyone would want to have a discussion or want to ask any question, you can feel free to ask us anytime. Sriram, who is from Redington, he will be giving you a presentation on SD-WAN, Velocloud, and hopefully we have a good session here. Thank you, guys, and Sriram, over to you.
Thank you, Hashmat. So yes, we are delighted to be here, partnering with Unicorp to do this and bring this solution to all of you. And I also want to mention a couple of points before we begin. So SD-WAN is fairly new concept, so to speak, from a technology perspective. So what I would like to do is to introduce what VMware is doing as a whole, and then on the networking space, and then move on to what is Velocloud SD-WAN and how it can benefit enterprises and organizations today, and how it needs to bridge the gap that exists today from a networking perspective. Okay, with that we'll begin. So one of the things that I want to mention straight off is that we all know that the applications are the focus of all organizations today. Applications are the way that we are able to reach our users and customers, which means that we need to focus on application, which has resulted in some interesting evolutions that has happened when it comes to how they're designed, architected, and delivered to users and customers. We know that we used to have a very straightforward client-server model that has served well for applications for a long time. And since we have moved to a tiered approach, which is predominantly the way applications are delivered today, which is which is a system which has its own its own components that are managed separately. The web component is a separate system. Then there is the app itself, which is managed by application teams, and then the DB. So we separated these components, and then we have kind of made this a little more easier to manage and easier to upgrade, right? And we have also seen there are a lot of changes with a lot of large enterprises where they have moved away from this and gone to microservices based architecture, which is what we see with containers and these little chunks of apps that perform a specific function. So while the applications have changed in dramatic fashion, it has evolved quite a lot, especially in the last 5 years or so. we see that the network hasn't really kept up with the pace. For example, especially if we look at the WAN space, the technologies that we use today, these are technologies that have existed almost from the beginning of networking. For example, the BGP that runs the internet, as well as the MPLS, which was a buzzword say 10 years ago. They haven't really evolved at the same pace. While they have evolved, they also have limitations. Now, the reason primarily for this uh, this this disparity in evolution is primarily because of the fact that networks were typically architected across hardware systems, number one. Number two, different vendors would have different ideas and vision, and that vision would create heterogeneous networks, which are hard to manage. Um, they are hard to maintain, and these traditional architectures, like, I remember when I first started in networking about 13 years ago, we still had these complex three-tier architecture in the LAN. We had these large boxes in the WAN which did a number of different functions by adding different modules. So this inflexible approach, made it hard for enterprises to be innovative about their networking. And finally, of course, one of the major challenges that exists today in terms of networks is the fact that we have network and security teams which has a lot of overlapping functions, and they kind of get their information in a siloed fashion. They don't really have the agility to complement each other, and this creates a lot of wastage in terms of human resources as well. Now, that is what VMware wants to change with its software-defined approach. And software-defined networking is no longer a buzzword. It's no longer a term that only applies to large enterprises or small enterprises. All IT teams require to look at software-defined approaches in order to solve a lot of problems that exist today. For example, we need to look at network as a layer 2 to layer 7 integrated technology, and we need to have components that fit into these different layers at the level that we need them to, and we need to be able to be elastic about this too. And the second part is that we want to make sure that you have the flexibility to run your apps anywhere. There should not be any hurdles to move to the cloud, or to run, for example, or to bring up a DR site. It should be a matter of minutes. It should not take hours, because these kind of flexibility when it comes to having the workloads anywhere, that is another major vision for VMware in its entire portfolio. And finally, automation. Automation was one of those luxuries that IT teams used to have a few years ago. Large enterprises used automation to optimize their workforce. They used it to achieve a lot of things that make sense when you have a large team. But with cloud coming into the picture, with AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud now being quite prominent across all sections, that automation has become extremely important. Now, what we want to achieve with from a networking standpoint is that we have the same automation again, regardless of the fact that the workloads are running in the cloud, it's on-prem, or even SaaS. So we need to have automation plugged into all these areas where networking is required, and it needs to be consistent. And that is another major point or the major benefit of following the VMware vision for when it comes to networking. Of course, VMware is very famous for compute and storage virtualization, but VMware has also invested quite a lot in network virtualization and a software-defined approach towards networking as well. This is the overall portfolio. and its functions. And today we'll be looking at VMware SD-WAN by Velocloud in a little more detail, so that we can see what this particular component is about. And one of the things that I really like about VMware's approach is the fact that these components, they can work together as an integrated solution, or they can work independently as well. There is no vendor lock-in. Unlike a lot of other vendors out there, there is no need for us to buy an entire suite of products from VMware for us to get these functionalities. In order to achieve these benefits, we don't need to have all of them. We just need to look at exactly what the business needs and what the application and the users want, and then we can pick and choose those components, right? So today we'll look at specifically at SD-WAN. So quickly, an overview of what Velocloud has done so far. So Velocloud is fairly a new company. It was acquired by VMware in 2017. It was founded in 2014, and it has a large footprint across the globe, and a lot of major mission critical networks, big and small, they are run on VMware SD-WAN. Another major point that I want to make is that if you look at the left bottom screen, you have all these ecosystem partners that we have listed, and that is very important too. This is one of those products. When we talk about WAN, we need to have a product that can integrate with a lot of different technologies, a lot of different partners, and because of this, it makes it easier for us to not only have a secure WAN, and also at the same time insert services that the customers may already have. So we work with all the major vendors in the security space. So any cloud delivered or even on-prem delivered services, we can run those services either on a Velocloud device or in parallel with it, as a cloud delivered service as well. In terms of market share, this is from 2017, but the latest market share, which Cisco famously doesn't reveal anymore in terms of SD-WAN. But as far as the rest of the competitors are concerned, VMware currently has close to a 40% market share in the SD-WAN space, and that is quite a lot, because that is more than double what any other vendor has. And that is a testament to how mature this technology is, and also the availability of features, the features that are unparalleled, that's not being offered by any other vendor out there. So this is so the point of this slide is to show you that this is a tried and tested, this is a mature technology that has been brought to the market, and we are starting to see in the region as well that we are seeing a lot of customers adopt SD-WAN. And they are starting to see some benefits associated with it. This is the Gartner Magic Quadrant. So the first time Gartner acknowledged that SD-WAN is a technology platform by itself was in 2018, and as you can see, VMware is in the leaders quadrant there, along with Cisco and Silver Peak. And as you can see, in 2019, VMware has moved up, and it is starting to pull away from the other players in the market. That is primarily down to the fact that there are new features that are required in SD-WAN, which are being delivered by VMware, whereas some of the other vendors have kind of struggled to bring these important features to their solution. The same thing doesn't happen with VMware. And one of the reasons why it doesn't happen to VMware is because this is a true software-defined solution. There is no dependency on hardware, which means that we are able to bring these new features, and then this is a very transparent process. This happens in the background, and whenever this change happens, the global change, and every 3 months, whatever the features are required for IT teams are coming to them without being disruptive at all. In terms of the architecture itself, it's extremely straightforward. So there are only 3 components that we need to remember. One is the edge locations, which is every time there is a workload or user, we will place a Velocloud edge device there. For example, branches, DC, even in cloud as well, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. We can place a device even in Oracle. We can do that now. So all the major cloud providers, hyperscale cloud providers, every time there is a workload there, and every time there is a user from our end, we will place an edge device, and this edge device will form a mesh, and that is the overlay that we will establish, which exists in all the locations. The second part of this, and this is really exciting because this is the secret, right? This is the secret sauce. This is the reason why Velocloud is so successful. Now, when it comes to infrastructure as a service like AWS or Azure, it's extremely easy to deploy a device there that we can control, because we control that environment. We know where the resources are. We know where the compute is. We know where the storage is, and we can place an edge device, which means that we control that environment. But in today's world, especially with the pandemic, collaboration like the one which we are having right now, there are a lot of services that we are consuming, which is software as a service. And SaaS environments have a different challenge of their own. The reason being, we don't really control the environment from which SaaS services are delivered. For example, today's session that we are having on this platform could be getting delivered from some other part of the world. There is no way for us to control that, right? So from that perspective, one thing that Velocloud can do that no other vendor can do is to provide you gateways. So the SD-WAN cloud gateways that you see there are actual gateways maintained by Velocloud, which exist in these data centers these SaaS providers have. So when the SaaS provider opens up a new data center anywhere in the world, one of the things that is going to happen is Velocloud is going to place a gateway, and they're going to maintain it. And that gateway will also be used whenever you have a service from that SaaS provider. For example, if you have Office 365, then we are going to have a gateway there, which your network will utilize to optimize traffic that is coming from the SaaS. There is no vendor right now doing this. This is unique to Velocloud, and one of the reasons why Velocloud has been very successful, because even the workloads which is not in our control is still part of the overlay. It is still part of our network now, right? And of course, everything is controlled by the orchestrator. This is a control plane, completely differentiated from the other two, which means that no traffic, no customer traffic ever reaches the orchestrator. The orchestrator is, there just to control the devices. That is the thinking part of the network, and and from a WAN perspective, for the first time, we have. I want to say zero touch provisioning, but we all know that there is a minimal touch provisioning. So one of the things that is so great about Velocloud is the fact that there are no individual logins into the edge devices. Everything that we do is done from the orchestrator, and as soon as we plug the device in and connect it to the internet, it will call home to the orchestrator, and based on the serial number, orchestrator can identify to whom this device belongs to and what configuration needs to be pushed. And once it is set up, the site is up and running. The whole process takes about 3 to 4 minutes. And all the policies can be configured in the orchestrator beforehand, which means that as soon as the site is activated, there's no more downtime required. And any changes that we make there is not going to impact the traffic once it's established as well. And if you see, one of the things that stands out in this particular slide is the fact that at the physical layer, we no longer worry about what sort of internet bandwidth is available at each site. So the benefit of this is that we can reduce, at least, if not take away, the reliance on MPLS, which can be, one, expensive, or it could be, and it can also be, it can take time to set up. For example, if we have locations across a number of sites and we need to establish, say, 6 or 7 MPLS lines, it takes about 7 to 8 weeks for that to be set up and tested and for it to go live. Whereas, with Velocloud, it takes a few minutes. That is another major benefit of having Velocloud SD-WAN. And unlike other vendors who will when you look at the marketing material from all the other vendors, you will always see phrases like failover. The key thing about Velocloud is that there is no more failover. We are not going to discuss failover because there is nothing to failover to. For example, if there are a number of links available, and this could be different types of links. It could be 3G, 4G connections, or it could be broadband, or it could be lease lines or MPLS. Regardless of what type of connection it is, once we make it part of the Velocloud solution, the overlay is going to consider that as bandwidth. And we of course we will monitor the links to make sure that that link has enough capacity to send the traffic that we want to send, but we bundle all of that together. So basically we are commoditizing the underlying bandwidth, which is not a lot different from what VMware did when it commoditized the hardware with server virtualization, storage virtualization, and then eventually with NSXT network virtualization as well. It's the same concept. We are just doing it slightly different when it comes to Velocloud because we do have edge devices which are hardware. I'm not going to go through all the features of Velocloud, but I wanted to put this slide out there because when it comes to SD-WAN, to claim to be the best, the solution needs to have all the features so that we never get to say no whenever a customer asks us, if a particular feature is available. Or, from a design perspective, from my perspective, it is I don't have to worry about the limitations of the technology, so that whichever design, whatever existing setup, we have the flexibility and the feature set to accommodate all of that. There is no difference. It makes no difference to Velocloud to be integrated to any type of infrastructure that is already existing. So that is one of the highlights of Velocloud that I think is very important to consider as well. The second part is that today we know that there is a lot of requirement for WAN traffic to be in segments so that we can control that traffic. For example, sometimes we need to segment the traffic that should never that should be treated very differently. For example, PCI information and the data security standard that's associated with PCI. When it comes to Velocloud, we can turn that on with a click and configure the policies. And once we do that, we have a certified solution that delivers that PCI traffic to anywhere we want to go, between the locations and also between multiple entry and exit points in the cloud as well. So all the features, and it is delivered in a very simple solution. We place edge devices and we control them through one pane of glass. And this is the entire WAN that we are talking about, with all the other benefits added in. Now, the secret sauce of SD-WAN by Velocloud is this. So it does three things. We call it DMPO, Dynamic Multipath Optimization. What it really means is that we have a number of links in each location, and each of those links are treated as part of a bundle. So we kind of take all that bandwidth and then consider that a single pipe, right? Which is what you can see here. We call this a brownout situation. If you see the before, if you see the illustration that says before, so we have two links. One is a broadband cable and the other is an MPLS. And MPLS links are usually more reliable to send traffic than broadband lines. And what the system does in this case is it will monitor this continuously. So that's the first part. We uh, we look at how the links are behaving, and the orchestrator does a lot of predictive analysis here as well, gauging a particular link's ability to take the traffic and deliver it to the destination. Now, the second part that we do, and you can see the difference in wording here, we are calling it per packet steering, because we don't have to fail over. There's nothing, like I mentioned, there's nothing to fail over. What really happens is we just pick which link to send the traffic to. Now, this is where Velocloud holds a huge advantage over a lot of competitors like Fortinet, for example, or Palo Alto, or even Juniper and Talari and all these solutions. The reason being, when it comes to a firewall device, the basic design of a firewall is to treat the packets as a flow, which means that an entire session, if you're browsing something, that is an entire session, and once it starts taking a particular link, it cannot take the other one until that flow is finished. Whereas when it comes to Velocloud, we do not have that kind of limitation, because we have come up with the means to treat all traffic as packets, and it will be treated the same way both at the source as well as at the destination before it's delivered to the user. So because of this, we are able to send the packets through whichever available path, and the system will decide which is the ideal path. And this happens on a per packet basis, which means that it happens sub-second, which means we will, even if we are sending very high volume of traffic, it will still reach the destination. Another major benefit is what we call on-demand remediation. So once we've been monitoring the links and we know what it is capable of, and the second is we are able to steer it through multiple links, and then finally, apart from doing all this, the system is also intelligent enough, and it can automatically decide to employ other methods to make sure business critical traffic reaches its intended destination as well. For example, one of the things that we are able to do is when it comes to say Office 365, within that we have Teams, which is not fault tolerant. So whenever there are some issues that we are facing with interactive voice and video and all these high bandwidth applications which are business critical, it can sometimes replicate the packets to make sure that at least one of the packets reaches the destination. And when it reaches the Velocloud device at the other end, it will accept the first packet and then discard all the other duplicate packets. So we can sequence all the packets that is coming in and going out, and we can do that in real time. And it will make sure that the traffic has a very, very high probability of reaching the other side. So that is the reason why, because of these three things happening simultaneously and in real time, is the reason why you can see in the after that we do not see any packet drops or any challenges when it comes to getting traffic to the destination. Now I want to demonstrate this by showing you this. This is what DMPO does. This is on the left. What you're seeing is having 2% packet loss over a WAN link. Now, even if we have private lines, there is a possibility that 2% packet loss can happen. This is the internet that we're talking about, right? Whereas when we have SD-WAN, it can understand the available links and make sure that the user is not aware of any packet loss or any jitter or latency that we may be experiencing on one or more links. And it can also deploy some other mechanisms as well to make sure that the packets are not getting dropped, and thereby having the perfect quality, which means that the user or the customer experience is not getting affected because of network related issues. Basically, we have taken control over the WAN by deploying Velocloud. One of the major use cases that we see, and predominantly what customer keeps keeps coming back to us in the region, is the adoption of cloud. Now, cloud adoption has a lot of challenges. From a technical standpoint, one of the major challenges of having to migrate to cloud is that we'll have to abandon the old design that we have been using for a lot of years. For example, when it came to distributed enterprises, from say 15 years ago, we have always used what we call a hub and spoke design, which means that the DC, from where majority of the workloads are, we will have a large device there, and then we'll have a primary link, which is typically an MPLS line, and across to all the branches, and then we'll have a backup, usually through IPsec VPN, and we'll have these smaller firewalls in the branches, which will kind of backhaul all the traffic, right? It will send all the traffic to the DC, and DC will send all the traffic back. Now, this used to work fine, but with cloud, now we have two locations with workloads. So we have to connect all these branches to the cloud at the same time. Now, when it comes to AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, they all have some sort of services to connect your DC to the cloud. AWS calls it Direct Connect. I think Microsoft calls it Super Route, I believe. Either way, these services, what they do is, they provide a pipe, not unlike MPLS. It's a tunnel between between AWS or the cloud provider and the DC, which is a great solution. But when we have all these branches, we have to provide a connectivity between the branches and the cloud too. Now, that becomes very expensive if we use the solutions provided by these cloud customers. We had a customer who, it's a manufacturing company. This is in Saudi. They have around 90 locations within Saudi, and they have recently moved to some of their workloads to AWS. Now, as soon as they adopted the cloud, the users started, having issues. The performance went down, primarily because the latency has now increased. Now, all the traffic from the users in branches need to go to the DC first, and then from DC it will go to the cloud. It will come back to the DC, and then it is delivered to the branches. So we worked with them, and we did a POC by placing 3 branches in an overlay. So we deployed 3 devices, and then we deployed a virtual SD-WAN edge in AWS, and we tested this to show the customer that with no additional investment other than the SD-WAN, all the users were able to connect to the cloud directly. They were also able to connect to the DC whenever required, which means that we are eliminating that need for complex and expensive mechanisms to create mesh connections. And as more and more workloads start moving out of the DC onto co-location data centers, to SaaS, and to cloud, we are looking at a future where all of these locations need to coexist, and we need to collect all these other locations, all these users and customers, to all of these locations at the same time, so that their performance, they do not see performance issues when it comes to the application delivery. And that is what we can achieve, and we can do that in a very simple fashion, and at a fraction of cost, and at a fraction of complexity that exists today when it comes to connecting all the sites together. Another major point that Velocloud brings is services, other security services that we need to integrate. For example, we may already have Zscaler, which is a cloud cloud delivered service, or checkpoints. With checkpoints, I think they're called Cloud Connect. Palo Alto also has a very similar service. ForcePoint and Symantec, they're both famous for this as well. They provide these granular services from the cloud. And one of the things that is quite easy to achieve with Velocloud is we can easily integrate this by a check mark. We go to the orchestrator, we mention the IP address, which will be provided to us by these vendors, and that's all we need to do. And then it is going to take these policies, understand that policy, and apply it effectively to all the edges, which means that if we have a Zscaler subscription and if we have Velocloud, we don't have to recreate any of these policies anywhere else. Once it is created with Zscaler, Velocloud can take that policy and enforce it across all the edges. We have a browsing policy that needs to be applied. We have different browsing policies to be applied at the same location. All we need to do is include that check mark and then put in the IP address of Zscaler, and the orchestrator and the SDWAN is going to do the rest of the work for us. No duplication. This is the benefits of automation that we're talking about. There is no duplication of effort anymore. And another point is obviously that we can also use these edge devices. So we have a few edge hardware that can even run a full-fledged NGFW firewall from other vendors. So we have SD-WAN, we have wireless, and we also have NGFW in the same box. So imagine, if there are locations where maybe it's a retail location or maybe it's a kiosk, we can provide all of these services within a same box, consolidate everything together. And of course, we can turn on PCI in these locations as well, as and when necessary. So again, the point is that, this is an extremely flexible solution that can fit, that we can design around any existing infrastructure and also around any future plans that you may have. Regardless of what technology that you have in mind, we can design or architect the Velocloud solution all around it to complement what you already have, as opposed to the rip and replace, which often doesn't work in ways it's intended. From the perspective of management, this is an extremely straightforward solution. I have seen many UIs, and I come from a world where it was only CLIs in the days of Cisco ISRs and Catalyst switches and Juniper network switches, and even to some extent Fortinet and Palo Alto. The CLIs don't work, number one, anymore. It takes a lot to learn, and then you have to learn something else, and then it just doesn't work. Now, when it comes to UIs, this is probably one of the most innovative UIs that I've ever seen, and the reason why I really like this UI is because, unlike working with any of those other networking products, when I open this UI and when I want to create a policy, there are an enormous amount of smart defaults that's already there. For example, I want to create a business policy that says we have teams and we need to prioritize teams. I don't really have to define that from the scratch. When I select, and this application list is already provided, and I mention teams, and teams is automatically going to be populated with the kind of policy that I need to have, and I just need to verify that and then move on, which reduces an enormous amount of time when it comes to deployment. Configuring these devices are extremely simple. And then, of course, from an analytics standpoint, we can now measure application bandwidth. How much bandwidth is each application using? How much bandwidth is each user using? And all of that is available right out of the box. There is nothing additional required. These are the kind of smart analytics that we need on the WAN, which has been missing for a long time without a special solution, which typically does just that. Now this is all packaged into the same solution, and more LAN analytics is coming very soon to the orchestrator as well. So the key takeaway for today, is that we are we are targeting simplicity and visibility. With Velocloud SD-WAN, we are not only able to measure the links themselves, we are not only just measuring how the internet works, with all the available connections that we have. We are also able to measure how our application fits into that bandwidth. Are we overpaying for bandwidth? We can see that on a very granular level. We can see that over a long period of time. And of course, all of this visibility is coming with a lot of added simplicity too. Managing the WAN after this is not going to be a complicated process. It is centralized and with a lot of capacity to be delegated, which means that now networking and security teams can work together and they can have different access levels so that maybe so the networking team can focus on connectivity alone, whereas the security team can control the policies and make sure that the data is able to go across locations while it stays extremely secure. The assured application performance, as you can see, we no longer talk about quality of service. We are talking about application performance. We no longer talk about the details of how we achieve it. We are literally talking about how we can deliver these applications. So I want to take you back to the first slide. Like I mentioned, this is one of those innovations that is actually going at pace with how the application is progressing. So with DMPO, we are able to deliver the quality of experience that is required for the users. So this is a solution that focuses on application and the users. And of course, managed on-ramp to the cloud. So we all know that the cloud is going to stay for a while, and it's going to stay for a long time. And in that scenario, we need to have a solution that can help us and reduce the complexity, and also provide us a path to move to the cloud. Now, even if we don't do that right now, let's say this year there is no plans to move to the cloud, but 3 years from now, if we want to move to the cloud at that time, then we are going to have to look at how we are going to provide that connectivity. By having SD-WAN today, we no longer worry about how connectivity is going to be. It truly solves a major challenge when it comes to cloud adoption as well. Okay, I think I'm starting to run out of time, and that was my last slide. I will go back and now check if we have any questions. Thank you, Hashmat. Thanks, Junaid. And thank you everyone for joining today.
Thanks all. Bye-bye.